I'm Sister Andrea Lee. I am president of St. Catherine University, and it is truly a pleasure to welcome you here tonight. Our own students and faculty, our graduates of the MAOL program, our St. Kate's community members, and especially our honored guests, Mr. Bill George and Cathy Wurzer. Tonight we acknowledge a milestone in the history of our university. The Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership program, which all of us know simply and affectionately as MAOL, was founded in 1986 as the second graduate program at St. Kate's. Theology was first, not a bad connection there. And then, of course, our university was the College of St. Catherine. As we celebrate the 25th anniversary of this signature program, I am personally delighted to extend a special welcome to my friend and longtime colleague, Dr. Julie Bell White-Newman. Julie Bell was a co-founder and the first director of the MAOL. Julie Bell is officially retired from St. Catherine University, but let me assure you that that doesn't mean very much. I was a guest in her beautiful home in Naples, Florida, just a few weeks ago, and she has been very busy in Naples, not only doing things that were her personal pursuits, but also carrying the banner for St. Catherine University in southwestern Florida, opening her home to our graduates, and recently participating in a very prestigious program of leadership in the city of Naples. So, and of course, there are here with us tonight a wonderful array of MAOL graduates. Julie Bell and a small circle of her colleagues gathered in the early 1980s to develop a program that would meet the educational needs of experienced professionals. Their research in anticipation of that program unearthed no prototypes nationally at the time. And indeed, their inquiries revealed a strong desire for graduate education that at that time would focus not just on business, but on leadership and on ethics. It's noteworthy and a bit ironic, a quarter of a century later, to see how many graduate business programs have followed their lead. St. Kate's was known back then, as it is today, as one of the nation's foremost institutions educating women to lead and influence. The development of a graduate program in organizational leadership was an early step toward university status, which we achieved just a year ago, or 2 years ago this June. The MAOL also marked one of our early forays into educating men across all the graduate programs that we have at the university today. The MAOL program was created based on 4 assumptions. First, it should reflect St. Catherine's mission by infusing the curriculum with ethics and with the spirit of the liberal arts. Second, it would combine theory and practice so students would be able to apply on Monday morning what they had learned in class on Friday night. Third, we would extend St. Kate's weekend format to busy professionals at the graduate level. This is 30 years, almost 30 years ago now. And fourth, provide interdisciplinary learning around core competencies such as finance, economics, and communication, with an important value-added emphasis on ethics and leadership. Back then, in 1986, the business community did not believe that ethics or leadership could be taught. Today, there are master's degrees in leadership multiplying across the Twin Cities and the nation. The MAOL program has evolved in innovative ways throughout its 25-year history. We've added an array of special concentrations. We have a partnership with Hamlin Law School and its Dispute Resolution Institute that began in 2002. And more recently, we've formed a partnership with Hamlin's Health Law Institute. We've developed custom graduate certificates in organizational leadership offered on site at leading corporations such as Fairview and Wells Fargo. Under the current MAOL program director, Rebecca Hawthorne, We've also integrated a global perspective throughout the MAOL curriculum and developed study abroad courses, something that graduate students increasingly tell us they want and need. The most recent jewel in this crown is our new partnership with the Peace Corps as a site of the Fellows USA program. We are proud to have the only business leadership program in Minnesota affiliated with the Peace Corps, and will be proud to welcome our first returned Peace Corps volunteers to St. Kate's campus this fall. And so we have much to celebrate this evening. We are so happy you are here to do it with us. Thank you for sharing this evening for us, and for many of you, the graduates of the program, for taking what you learned here and helping it to make such a difference in your professional and personal lives. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your support. And now I am pleased to introduce Dr. Rebecca Hawthorne, who will welcome our distinguished guests. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Sister Andrea. This evening, we extend a special welcome to our two guest speakers, Bill George and Cathy Wurzer. Bill and Cathy exemplify, each in his and her own way, the leadership values that are fundamental to the MAOL program at St. Catherine University. Bill George has amassed an impressive resume as a business leader, author, and professor. Former chairman and chief executive officer of Medtronic, he currently serves on the boards of Goldman Sachs and ExxonMobil, and serves as a trustee of the Carnegie Endowment of International Peace, the World Economic Forum USA, and the Guthrie Theater. Named one of the top 25 business leaders of the past 25 years by PBS, Bill has taught leadership at Harvard Business School since 2004 and authored 4 best-selling books, including 7 Lessons for Leading in Crisis, True North, Finding Your True North, and Authentic Leadership. Bill's books on leadership have been translated into 15 different languages and are read worldwide. Through his leadership practice, his teaching, and his writing, Bill George emphasizes the critical role of self-awareness, understanding one's personal values, passions, and purpose, developing one's authentic voice and support network, and charting one's path while integrating all aspects of one's life in a grounded manner. These tasks are rooted in our life stories. Our life stories shape our leadership stories. In True North, Bill and his colleagues examine the personal stories of 125 leaders to identify keys of authentic leadership success. Leadership stories and an examination of the wisdom within weave throughout the MAOL curriculum and frame the development of ethical, effective, and enduring leaders. Cathy Wurzer is a leader who works also with the stuff of stories. One of Minnesota's premier journalists with an extensive background in both public and commercial broadcasting, Cathy currently hosts Minnesota Public Radio's Morning Edition and co-hosts Almanac, a weekly public affairs program produced by Twin Cities Public Television. Cathy has won several Emmy Awards for her work on Almanac. In addition, she has won the Siegenthaler Award for Broadcast Reporting and an Associated Press Award for Investigative Reporting. Cathy is also a published author, having written the regional bestseller Tales of the Road, Highway 61 in 2008, published by the Minnesota Historical Society Press. She was executive producer and host of the public television documentary of the same name that premiered in 2009 and won 2 Emmy Awards. Both Cathy's book and DVD and Bill's books are available for purchase and signing this evening. Cathy Wurzer practices her leadership through her roles as storyteller and skilled investigator. She has mastered the art of listening intently and questioning critically with an eye toward deepening our understanding and appreciation for the issues at hand. Cathy's emphasis on reflection, on critical and creative thinking, on engagement through dialogue is a hallmark of MAOL leadership learning. Speaking of engagement, audience members are invited to jot down questions for our guests on the green cards located on your tables. We will collect these and incorporate your voices into the question and answer session to follow Cathy and Bill's dialogue this evening. And now, on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership program at St. Catherine University, I invite Cathy Wurzer and Bill George to address the art of leadership, past practices to future forecasts.
Thank you, Rebecca. Bill, always good to see you, and actually in conversation in front of people instead of in my little studio, which we normally see each other. Always good to see you. Let's look back before we look ahead, if that's okay. You and I have talked over the past few years, actually a decade or so, about leadership. And in the past 25 years, it's been kind of a difficult slog for leaders, don't you think? We've had some major leadership failures. We've had business and political scandals, the economic meltdown. From where you sit, what happened in the past 25 years?
Well, I'd first of all like to congratulate everyone at St. Catherine's University for having the vision 25 years ago to put in place an organizational leadership program.
Absolutely.
The first of its kind in the United States.
So,
And I want to congratulate everyone. So,
happy birthday.
and if you put that in context, Cathy, that's just about the time when the raiders were taking over companies and everything was going short term. It really started about 25 years ago. And the theories of Milton Friedman were taking hold, that the only thing that mattered was shareholder value, and which morphed into short-term shareholder value, because as the market declined from average holding periods of stocks from 8 years to 6 months, people became ever more short-term, and that's even truer today to hedge funds than it's ever been. And also the idea that people are only motivated by one thing, their self-interest. Now, no psychologist, which my wife is, would ever tell you that's true. We're motivated by security, by bonding with other people, and by the search for meaning and purpose in our lives. What's it all about? Why are we here? What are we going to contribute? But that became the dominant theory. In academia, the economists became regnant. And I think it took over the thinking about business, that our job was to serve the shareholder. And there are a lot of academics writing about that. And I think what happened is it led to a huge amount of destruction. So people were putting their self-interest ahead of their institution's interest, and they're putting shareholder value ahead of the value of their customer, their employees, and their communities. Now, I would honestly say that any company that doesn't create clear value for its customers that's superior to what its competitors do is generally going out of business. That's why General Motors went out of business. They focus on shareholder value instead of value to their customers through the products they made. And that is the formula for, and a lot of companies did it. And it took a while to catch up with some of them. And I think it culminated in the last 10 years in what I call leadership's lost decade, because everything blew up. And a lot of the pressure on corporations, which I received, and all of us did who were CEOs, was coming from the stock markets, from Wall Street and from financial institutions. And it's ironic that the boomerang that they threw out came back and hit them in the head, and it was the financial institutions that wound up in the meltdown. And as I told you earlier, you know, in this, there were a lot of crooks back in the Enron era. There were lots of crooks.
WorldCom, that's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
WorldCom, Tyco, they all went to jail. Quest, that used to be U.S. West, but in this group, I don't think it was so much a question there weren't, other than this fellow with Galleon, didn't appear there any crooks, but it was this self-interest that I'm out there to see how much money I can make, and it's all about that. And have you ever seen this bumper sticker, this horror bumper sticker, which Penny and I hate, you know, note the male word, but he who has the most toys at the end of the day wins.
Yes.
You know, I mean, this is nonsense. But I'm just saying there is this influence. And I think, and honestly, the meltdown of 2008, as much pain as it caused for people, and I should note that even though we're hiring again, we still have 25 million people, 15, 16% of the workforce, who are looking for full-time jobs that can't find them. So don't think that the pain is over. But it actually is resulting, as I talk to CEOs, in a revolutionary rethinking of leadership and a shift from leading for short-term shareholder value to leading by values as a way to run their enterprises. So there's some light at the end of this tunnel.
Good, and we want to talk about that. In terms of pressure, you mentioned you felt the pressure too from Wall Street. How did you not fall prey to those pressures at Medtronic?
Well, we had a mission at Medtronic, which said our mission was to restore people to full life and health. And we took that very seriously. In fact, when Earl Bakken interviewed me for becoming chief operating officer and president of the company, he never even asked me anything about myself. He only wanted to know, was I in sync with the mission? Did I believe in the values of Medtronic? And I really did believe in that and I also knew that that's what motivated our employees. And that's how people got up and got so excited about coming to work every day, was helping patients and working with doctors and supporting them and creating quality products and having innovative ideas for therapies like cerebral palsy or Parkinson's disease or incontinence, breakthrough therapies. But that's what motivated them. They weren't motivated. If I went out and said, okay, guys, we got to get stock price up, I get a lot of blank stares. But I also realized that the stock price is nothing more than the result of serving your customers well and having motivated employees.
But you were with some high-rolling CEOs who made, millions and millions of dollars tens of millions of dollars. That's such a seductive mentality, but you seem to have avoided it. Why? What's your personal?
You mean me personally?
Yes, your personal value system obviously played into how you act as a CEO.
Well, it's not just values; it's just a philosophy of life. As far as I know, I don't want to offend anyone that believes in reincarnation, but basically, I don't believe you can take it with you. In fact, I like to say the only thing you can take with you is what you leave behind, and that's the legacy, your relationships, and what you did for other people on this earth. We're all going to die sometime, but you'd like to think your life meant something while you were here, and it probably was not about keeping your grandson from having to work for a living like you did. It's not about just creating a lot of wealth. We all like to have enough money to have a good life, don't get me wrong, but I think if you get that out of sync, or even you get caught up in the glory and the power, I think you really lose it. And I think you have to stay very focused on what really matters.
I've often said, don't believe your own press releases in my business.
Well, that's true. No, it's very dangerous. It's not just money. It is a seduction of power, status, and glory,
in the past 25 years, can we say that the great man theory of leadership has mostly died, or if it's not, it should be?
Well, I don't want to offend any of the women, but we had this theory of leadership about the great man. General George Patton going across the fields of France. He could slap his soldiers and beat up on them, but he was the great man, right? And we had this all-powerful CEO model, and CEOs would be on the cover in magazines in those days. I mean, like Time magazine. I don't mean like Business magazine. And it's just wrong. Let's kill it. I think it's dead. But the CEOs I know realize it's no longer true. First of all, the male gender's got to go, but it isn't just that. I mean, the sole male gender. But I think, the idea, I think the philosophy of leadership is fundamentally wrong. Because today, you want a successful organization, you need an organization of empowered people at all levels. You don't need a great leader on top. You need hundreds, if not thousands, of leaders throughout your organization that are excited to do their work, even those without any direct reports. Some of the best leaders in Medtronic were people that produce great quality products, innovating in the labs, and could really help a doctor in surgery. They had no direct reports. So I think we need to try. And frankly, your students here are not going to go work for a hierarchical, bureaucratic organization where they can't make a difference. They're just not. And so you're not going to get the best people. My students won't either. And so it is really changing. So I think the job of a leader has changed dramatically. If I can go on just for a minute and say, the job of a leader today, number one job is to align people around mission and values. And if you do that well, you're halfway home. The second thing is leadership, Cathy, is not exerting power over other people. That's a flawed notion. People have written a lot about power and influence. I just don't believe that. The job of a leader is to empower other people to step up and lead. Not like there's one leader and you have 2,000 or 20,000 or 200,000 followers. No, your job is to empower people at all levels. Even the military gets that. That's the way they're running the Army today. is empowered leadership at all levels. And third, I think leadership starts with an understanding of service. And if you don't come into leadership, first of all, unless you have your own business, you own 100%, you're really just, you're given a sacred trust to run an organization. And your job is to serve. Whom do you serve? You serve your customers, and you serve your employees, and you serve your communities, and then you serve your shareholders. I'm not against that. I'm a capitalist. I believe in that. But it results as doing all these things. And finally, leadership today, it's not about individual performance. Problems we're trying to solve are way too complex for just an individual superstar. We need collaborators. We need people that can work together because they all require a multidisciplinary solution. So I commend St. Catherine's for being one of the first universities in the country that gets that doesn't just have silos. You got an economic silo here and a mathematics silo here and, another business silo and no one talks to each other. It is about bringing people together to collaborate.
So you have a more collaborative and empowered workforce. You think that makes for a stronger company?
No, there's no question about it. I guarantee I'll take an empowered organization and put them up against a hierarchical vertical organization. And over the long term, the empowered organization will win every single time. And you can see it. Just look around. Who are the organizations that are winning? They're all empowered organizations today. You go out to a Google or an Apple, those are empowered organizations. Medtronic, that's what we tried to create. Is that kind of sense of empowerment. And you look at a General Mills. These companies really work the empowerment. They're not about power over people. And the ones that did have just steadily gone out of business. And so there aren't many of them left.
Long term here, Bill, as we focus on a more collaborative approach to leadership, more of a team approach, other countries are focusing on a more competitive model. China comes to mind. How does that bode then for the United States in a global economy?
Okay. I think as a nation, is this mine? Okay.
This is called a technical problem.
Okay. Keep going.
Theoretically, I should ad lib here, Bill.
You can ad-lib.
Give the
It's
weather,
okay.
the time, a couple news headlines.
As a nation,
There you go.
we have to be competitive.
There you go.
Sorry. Thank you. How are we competitive as a nation? Because we use our greatest strengths. What are our greatest strengths in America? Our greatest strengths are ingenuity, creativity, entrepreneurship, caring. If we don't play to those, we're not going to win the game. And we live in a global world. Every company today has to serve a global market. They have to access global suppliers. And many of them are accessing global workforce. That's not bad. But then you have to play to your relative strengths. And so we have some great strengths. I teach the Chinese every year, the last 5 years in Mandarin. I don't speak Mandarin, but we have simultaneous translation. And listening to the Chinese, when they go into Mandarin, it's a very different world. It's like the Wild West. There's no, the person with the biggest six-shooter and the fastest draw wins. And so they're having to merge a value set. Now, I think they're hungry for the kind of value set we're talking about, but they aren't there yet, and they've got a long way to go. And so I think these countries, this value set is going to be the winning game. I can tell you, I'm working in a number of major companies, one with 400,000 people, one with 300, one with 200, and I'm not bragging. I'm just saying these companies now are shifting from running the organization from rules and processes to leading by values. And one of them is a major financial institution, okay? And they're shifting in that way now to running the organization by values. You know why? Because that's the only way they can figure out to bring their people together. That's the glue that brings the people together. What's the relationship between people in Saudi Arabia, in Korea, in Alabama, in Minnesota, if there's not a common value set? Because the cultures are so different. And then they're trying to create a common culture around their mission and values that we have. Yes, we come from different cultures. We were raised differently. We speak different languages. But we come together around a common purpose. As in Medtronic's case, restoring people to full life and health. But it isn't just in the healthcare business. It's serving our customers in the grocery store business or providing the greatest merchandise at the best values as Target tries to do. And, so I think it's something that plays very well globally.
I was thinking, getting back to 25 years, I've been in journalism for 25 years. As I was thinking about this event, I've been in journalism 25 years and so many changes in my industry. The advent of the 24/7 news cycle is spurred on by huge changes in technology. Two things jump out at me over the past 25 years. Two things. We've experienced rapid change in this society and a huge dose of uncertainty. So from where, again, you sit, how well have leaders adapted to both in terms of rapid change in our society over the past 25 years, and then this level of uncertainty.
So you're getting right at the essence of leadership. You know, we have to have the capacity to adapt. And organizations that can't adapt become Neanderthals. They go out of business. But organizations have to adapt, but they adapt within a core set of values and a core purpose. And those that adapt in such a way they give up their values, they change who they are at their essence, okay, are not going to make it. So you have to keep that solid core, and then you adapt to change. You change your strategy, you change your tactics, you adapt to changes in the world. You have to. So we shouldn't be critical of people for adapting. Those are the ones like IBM has adapted tremendously in this era under Sam Palmisano. But he started the whole thing with leading by values. And then he put in what he called an integrated global enterprise or network, an organization to make collaboration the order of the day, and that's what the compensation goes to. But if you're not a values carrier for IBM, your compensation's way less than those people who may perform better than you do, but they're more selfish.
Give me an example of an organization that has not led by their values. I mean, just
Where would you like to start?
Yes, exactly.
We had
When
about
it comes
10
to-
financial organizations. Citigroup used to be the world's greatest bank, okay? And they went out of business. They had to borrow $306 billion for the U.S. government. Now the Vikram Panda is trying to bring them back. But, they basically, couldn't survive on their own. That'd be, it's a great organization. It's a tragedy. I mentioned, Ed Whittaker brought back General Motors after 50 years of decline. It's coming back. Now they had to go through bankruptcy. It was a tragedy for the people, for the shareholders, for customers, for everyone. But he got jumped in there and as CEO, and he did amazing things in a year to turn it around. So there are many, we're fortunate in this market to have many value-centered organizations. So we haven't had some of the real meltdowns. You look at a guy like Richard Davis on U.S. Bancorp, done a fabulous job. The U.S. Bank came through this thing, the first company to repay their TARP money that the government imposed on them. They didn't need it or want it, and but he's been very solid in being a commercial banker. He's not going off trying to do something else, and I think the people here have been very solid. I've had some loose association with the Cargill Corporation. Here's a company that's created enormous value. It's not well known, it's privately held, but enormous value by taking the long-term view. And they've always had the long-term view, and that's why they're so successful. Even though they do a lot of short-term trading, they still have the long-term view of building the enterprise.
Over the past 25 years, we've seen an increase in more women into mid-level managerial positions. And however, as of last year, 2010, Fortune magazine came out with their annual list of women chief executive officers in Fortune 500 companies. And the results are not good. Women CEOs lead in only 15 of the 500 companies, or 3%. Minnesota's a little bit better, 16%. Top-level executive positions in the top 100 Minnesota firms belong to women. A little bit better, but 16%, let's face it, is still not that great.
No.
So I want to know, again, why haven't we seen in the past 25 years more women climbing up that managerial ladder?
Well, there's an article on page B8 of the Wall Street Journal today called Coaching Urge for Women. Some new McKinsey studies coming out tomorrow. It's not out today. But talking about this issue, and I happen to agree with it, and it's a lot of things I've been saying, so there are a couple of things. We create cultures that aren't always conducive to women in organizations to continue a dynamic career. We don't take certain things into account, like work and home life balance. By the way, the men want that today just as much as the women. The younger men, the men in the 20s generation, not the men in my generation, but the men in that generation not only want it, they demand it. But I think we need to create that kind of environment because, we have so many dual career families and not just people that have to just purely for the money. We dual career families have people in this room because they're committed to their careers. And so we need to think that so we aren't having that kind of blockage of women to get to the very top.
Are there entrenched beliefs, Bill, in an organization that women can't juggle? I mean, most women I know are great multitaskers.
Right.
And is there an entrenched
They're also
belief?
great collaborators, Cathy.
Exactly. Is there any entrenched beliefs that need to be broken down when it comes to women can't have both a personal and professional life?
Well, we need to break that down for everybody. I mean, if I'm a man, I have two wonderful sons and a wife who worked, and proud of Penny's work as well in psychology and now integrative medicine. So, I don't think it should become a gender thing, but I think we've allowed it to become. in the old model that our parents were raised in. My mother stopped working when I was born, and she was a great leader, but she didn't exert it through for-profit work. She exerted it through nonprofit work. She was a great leader. But I think we need to get over that. It's not just a stereotype. We need to get over that. But there are some vehicles. We are not doing a good job in corporations. The model for developing leaders is flawed at its core. We're looking at trying to develop 30 great leaders or one great leader. Who's going to be the next CEO? It's built on this, if you will, the great man theory, the hierarchical model. It's not built on the idea of broad spread empowerment. So we need to be developing leaders at all levels. And you mentioned self-awareness earlier. I can say to you very honestly that in my experience, I have never seen anyone fail for lack of IQ. Now, admittedly, I'm working with people I tend to work with have IQs of 120 or up, but I've never seen one fail for lack of IQ. That is not the determining factor. What's the determining factor is emotional intelligence and the level of self-awareness people bring to it. But the question is, how do you gain self-awareness? You have to have experience in the real world. You can't get it like learning how to ski. You can't get it by watching videos. You can't gain self-awareness by watching videos. But I think you need to do two things that we don't honor. First of them is introspection and reflection. If you just follow the GE model and you have one experience after another and you never take time out, you go from one job on a Friday, another job on a Monday, or maybe one job on a Saturday night, another job Sunday morning, and you don't take time out to reflect on your mistakes, the reality is you'll just repeat the mistakes you made in the last job, and you won't really learn from that. So we need to have practices for introspection and reflection, and each of us should have a regular practice in our life that we do every day.
For
Could
instance?
be prayer, could be meditation, could be going out for a jog, could be sitting and talking to your spouse, but we need to have a regular practice. What did I do right and what did I do wrong? Steve Jobs had a great commencement speech at Stanford where he said he gets up every morning and looks at himself, is the last day of my life? Am I doing what I want to do? And am I doing it the right way? And so we need to look ourselves in the mirror. That's hard to do. So one of the ways you overcome that is having a group of people who are like peers. They're not bosses, they're not subordinates, that can, if you will, keep you honest and give you honest feedback. But feedback's a two-way street. You need to have a group of people that you share with, that you share all the ups and downs in life, the difficulties. Who would you go to? Who would you go to if you found you had a terminal illness? Who would you go to if your spouse was asking to leave you? Who would you talk to if you're about ready to get fired from your job?
Somebody
you need a
really
group of
trust.
people.
Somebody
Pardon?
really
Yeah.
trust.
And so we've created these 6-person, 8-person groups, for everything I teach at Harvard Business School. Just got through doing it with the Young Global Leaders Group. But I've had one of these groups for 35 years. We're now calling them True North groups because that links to the idea of True North. But it's a group of peers. And I think we need to have a support group in our lives. Who do you trust? Where can you do in a confidential environment? Who can I tell I'm thinking about leaving Honeywell and going to Medtronic? I can't tell my boss that if I'm just in the early stage. I can't tell my subordinates that. So
Did you toss it off your own personal support group when you were thinking?
Absolutely I did. And they said, well, I told them I was miserable in my work, and it wasn't about Honeywell, it was about me. And they helped point out why, and then they said, but you turned down Medtronic. Why? And so why don't you go back and talk to them? And plus Penny was extremely helpful in that process. So in those crucial decisions, who's there for you? Who sees you as you really are? Who can hold a mirror up and say, Bill, you're trying to be a big man and make a great impression. Why don't you be honest with what you're really feeling? And that's what we need to develop as leaders. See, we don't need style coaching. We don't need, no offense, but we don't need just to be good communicators like in the media. You can learn that, but you need to be good inside. It starts from the inside. If you're not good with yourself, eventually you're going to lose your way. If you can't deal with all those, if you will, things running through yourself that you don't like about yourself, I have a lot of weaknesses, but I have to learn to love my weaknesses like I love my strengths. They all came from the same place.
So you have to learn to lead yourself before you lead others.
The hardest thing anyone has to do is to lead themselves. Leading yourself is far more difficult than anyone that'll ever work for you or any group of people ever work for you. Because all the failures I've seen, most all of them, not all, but most all of them have come from failure to lead yourself. There's something that's driving you. I grew up in a very poor family, and I have a sense of deprivation, and I want to make sure I want to make a lot of money, and I'm never going back to the place I came from. And that says you're kind of losing your roots. You're losing your sense of who you really are. Nothing can replace that hole in your, if you will, your hole in your soul or hole in your stomach where, you don't feel whole. You don't feel good. You can't fake it. You can dress well, you can look nice, you can give a great impression. But if what's inside isn't there and you aren't grounded in who you are, what really matters? You know?
We all wear masks, though.
I
So
think
you're saying you got to get beyond that.
if we can get beyond our masks, we all yearn to be real. Don't you want to be real? You know? Don't you want to say, you know, I'm having a really bad day? You know? Would you be there for me? I mean, which of you has not ever said, which not ever felt, I'm having a really bad day? And who do you turn to tell that? You know what I mean? And so don't you want to just be honest and say, yeah, hey, or whatever it is, you know? I'm really nervous about this. I have to give this speech, and I'm really nervous. Can you give me some support here?
I can't think of one boss in my career who's ever admitted to any weakness, though.
Well, I had a friend, I wrote the foreword for a friend of mine, a book called Love Leadership. He's a homeless man who wrote this book, fabulous. He's raised $500 million for an organization that's focused on financial literacy. But he has a chapter there called Vulnerability is Power. See, if I pretend to you to be invulnerable, you're going to say, oh, come on, you're a phony. I can see right through you. You probably can't. But if I say, you know, I'm feeling really nervous in front of all of you right now, you know, then I have the power. You can't say, you look nervous to me. He said, yeah, I do. I actually am nervous. So let's get over it. You know, wouldn't you be? You know? And so I think if you really see that in being vulnerable, because where do we connect? Do we connect through genius, okay, or do we connect through humanity? Do you connect better with somebody that tells you how great they are when you go to an event like this, tells you all the great things they are, or do you connect with somebody that's willing to share with you the challenges and ask you for help? Think about it.
I want to get back to women
Yes.
in the boardroom here for just a sec.
Right.
If I could, please. Nurturing, actively grooming women to get into those managerial levels in,
Yes.
in the top echelons.
Should be 50%,
I think so.
because that's how many.
So how do, you know,
Well, why not?
how do we do that? And how do we do that? Because, you know, there's still a lot of older white guys who are in the corner office, and they don't you tend to kind of promote from within people that look like you?
I hope not.
Oh, no. I'm not
Gosh.
saying you.
That'd be
you
a
yourself.
disaster.
But that
Okay,
still happens.
so let me give you a
though.
little example, Kathy. Okay, so my wife had a male OBGYN when we were having our first son. And after the experience with this person, I said, Penny, I don't want you to ever have a male OBGYN again, okay? And so, you know, today my daughter-in-law is an OBGYN, and, you know, that profession is going to like 60, 70% women. Now, I think the issue is a lot of women haven't gone to business because they see a hierarchy there. They see a place that's all about male-dominated power. And if they saw a different kind of environment, go out to General Mills. Look how many women there are around. Just walk around. Ask Ken Powell how many people. Ask how many women on the board. How many people in the executive ranks.
Target's another example.
Target's another example. Lots of women. And I was on the board there for 12 years. Lots and lots of women in executive ranks. So you got to feel like I got a shot here. That's why you need female role models. You know, the person in the picture in the journal today is Ursula Burns, CEO of Xerox, one of the first African-American CEOs of a major corporation in the country. Fabulous woman. You know, she grew up in abject poverty. I mean, no one helped, you know, but but I just think we need, with women, you only need to do one thing. Just open the door. You know, you got to open the door, but you got to create an environment that people want to work in. And so if you see people, like Steve Sanger is great at General Mills, he would tell me about certain women that were feeling really stressed. I said, fine, you know, go home and, you know, work half-time for a while. But then this woman came back and wound up being a senior vice president or group head. So you don't, and I think career pathing is all wrong too. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be president of something by the time I was 30 and CEO by 40. Why? We're going to live till 90, 95, 100. So what's the rush? And so I think Marilyn Carlson Nelson has a great idea of on-ramp, off-ramp. And the idea that, you know, yeah, and this could apply to men too, to women, you know. I know lots of guys taking sabbaticals. So, but I think the idea that, okay, you go off-ramp a little bit, you work half-time, maybe you don't work at all. It's not just maternity leave, but maybe beyond that period, you've got 2 or 3 kids now, and, you know, you want to do something different, but you come back. I have a daughter-in-law who's like that right now. She's been out of the workforce 4 years. She's living in Germany. She's fabulous, just fabulous. Harvard Business School graduate, great. I'd hire her in an instant, you know, but she now have to have way back in the workforce. Would you hire her? Is she behind some of the other people in a career track? Sure, but why is that important? You know, it's the person who gets there at the end. Remember the story of the tortoise and the hare? You know, it's the tortoise that arrived first.
Cisco Systems, I think, is a great program where they allow you to fulfill and follow your passion for 1 year You can volunteer at a nonprofit
Right.
anywhere in the world. You're still a Cisco Systems employee, full benefits and pay, and then you get to come back after a year.
Right.
And most people say they're refreshed and they're ready to go.
Right.
Is that a good recruitment tool, you think?
I think it's a great recruitment tool.
And as we get into a
But it
younger-
also ought to be a great human development tool. Now, the question is, if I took that year off, and forget about gender for a minute, could I still get to be CEO? And my answer is, why not? If you come back a more whole person, fuller, richer, you have a better understanding. I'm not just saying you're going to sit on the beach for a year, or go skiing for a year. I'm talking about something where you're really getting in touch with yourself. Like my son went off to Kathmandu for a year, before he went to medical school. That kind of thing, I think, can really be enriching.
You ask why not, but in reality, is it a smart move to take a year off if you want to be CEO?
Well, that's what we got to change. Okay? Okay?
I hear you.
Okay?
Going back to women in the,
We've been talking about women the whole time.
just a second here. Because my friend...
Is there anything about empowerment or collaboration that the women in the room don't like?
Yeah,
or-
well, actually, we'll talk about that. Rebecca and her staff did a very good study that we talked about on Almanac last week.
Right.
About boards, women being on boards. 14.3% of board members are women. Is that correct? Is that, Rebecca, I got that right? But I'm wondering, and really, you need to have more women on boards. As you say, you see women at the board level. And if you're a middle managerial female, you're thinking, okay, I can get to this level. But I'm wondering, as you know, you're on the board of what, Goldman Sachs and ExxonMobil, is that right? More and more boards are graying. I heard you quoted about this, I think, in the Wall Street Journal.
It's okay.
Many boards are raising the retirement ages, and more older men are staying on those boards, and they're not leaving quickly. What's the downside to that? And what's the
Well, I
upside
would
to
just
that?
say, yeah, you have to have enough turnover, but, I have a friend who's going to, she's over 70 right now, and she's going to have to leave a board that we served together on, a CEO from this community, that I'd recommend anyone have her on her board that could get her till she's 80 or 85. She's going as strong as ever. So I don't see anything why age per se should be the criteria, because 70 is the new 50. So, but I think back to women
70
on
is
boards.
the new
I think
50.
I don't believe in check the box diversity. We got a woman, we have an African American, we have an Hispanic American. I think what we should look at it much more is, does your board reflect the diversity of the customers and employees you serve? Okay? So let's take Andrea Jung. She has, she's CEO of Avon, probably the largest company in the world. They have 6.5 million employees. Well, not employees, 6.5 million people, including a sales agent. But, that's a very diverse place, but it has to be, because look at their customer. And so I'm just saying, I think it should reflect that. Because then you have to have the knowledge there. You don't have them just to check a box. But I think that also means opening up the aperture, since there aren't that many women in senior executive positions, which is traditionally where board members have come from, and CEO jobs, then we have to look to college and university presidents, and we have to look to nonprofit leaders. So the boards I'm on are really opening up the aperture to see where can they find people that have had that kind of experience so they're ready to come on a board.
Let's talk about the future, too. Actually, we've been talking a little bit about the future. In past remarks, you've said that the sooner baby boomers relinquish leadership to a younger generation, the better society will be.
Right.
You made those remarks at a leadership event at Harvard back in February. You want to explain that a little bit?
Well, who led to all this problem, Who was it that was playing the game? I mean, that's the generation. It's my generation. Leaders have got us in trouble, so I'm not sure we're going to get us out at this stage in life. I mean, there are a lot of great leaders. They're baby boomers, don't get me wrong. You can't generalize. But I think the young people today are ready to go. They're ready to take on more responsibility. They're not going to wait in line for 10 to 20 years. I'll tell you, if they're with your organization and you make them wait in line for 10 years, they'll just go out and found their own company. And that'd be great, too. But I think we need to open up the opportunities. Let them found their own company within your organization. And I just think we need to open up those opportunities and give people. I had a shot at 27. The reason I came to Minnesota is I did this strategic plan for Litton Industries to get into the consumer microwave oven business in the days when there was no consumer microwave oven business. And then it got into trouble, and 6 months later, I was brought in here as assistant general manager of a $10 million business. But I had a great experience. I was 27 years old. Somebody believed in me. I had a boss who was willing to believe in me and give me that opportunity. Do you believe in the people that work with you? Are you giving them those opportunities? And if not, I say, why not? I think we give them the opportunity to see what they can do. You know, you don't want to kill them just because things didn't go well, but give people the opportunity. And so I think they're ready to go. And I think that's why you're seeing this whole new generation of entrepreneur-based companies that has a lot of young people in it. I mean, you know, let's remember that Bill Gates was 19, Mike Dell was 19. These people were very young. Howard Schultz was 28 or 29 when he founded Starbucks. I mean, a lot of the people had started great things. You know, Earl Bachman was very young. You know, I mean, so we think of these people as older now, but they all got a young start. They got that experience early. So why wouldn't you give people? Can anyone give me a rationale why you wouldn't give them the opportunity? Is it threatening? No.
Some people are threatened, though.
Well,
as
get
you
over
know.
it.
Yeah, get over it. What do you think?
You know, life is not all about going up. I've come down. I don't lead anything now. You know, it's okay. You don't have to, it's not up, 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 and then you die, you know. You can kind of get up here and kind of, I'm just doing something different now. I used to have, you know, I'm not bragging, but I used to have 26,000 employees, and now I have a third of one, you know. I have one full-time person. It was wonderful. But, you know, I did go off to teach in Switzerland. I had a third of one person, and it was a good adjustment, you know, because you learn what you can do, just like you do, what you can do on your own.
Absolutely.
You know, you don't have a staff of 5,000 people.
No,
Like
it's
you
exhausting.
would at NBC.
Yeah, or CBS. What do you think the next generation of leadership, Bill, will look like? What's
What
the
do I
next
think?
generation going to look like?
Well, I think they'll look like the general population,
Well,
but I
yes.
think how will they behave?
Yes.
I think if I have, I'm not saying I don't have any influence, but if I had my way, I would have people that really understood the purpose of their leadership. That's the most important thing, and very few people do. I mean, why would I want to follow you, Cathy, if you didn't know where you're going? You know, as they say in Alice in Wonderland, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
That's right.
But I think it's really important. You have a sense of your purpose and a sense of your values. And then you have the ability to bring people around that joint so we can get alignment, so that my values and your values, we can get a common set. And then I think it's this capacity to really empower people, to get them excited. Why do the pharmaceutical companies in America not inventing any drugs anymore? Because not that they're spending the money on R&D. They're just not have the capacity to empower people and get them inspired in what they're doing in the labs. And so I think we need to get, the creativity is coming from individuals and small groups of teams trying crazy things. I was at Georgia Tech Day. I saw some wonderful examples, some undergraduate students doing a breakthrough in medical technology. You know, it was just amazing to me. And so I think it'll look like that. People that do, and people that don't care so much about their promotion or their self-interest, they want to collaborate to make something happen. They want to create a Facebook, or they want to create, you know, a really exciting new medical device or a biotech drug. And they get really excited about that. Let's go start out and do something. And I see so many of these people. And by the way, we haven't talked about the field of social enterprise, but for-profit, nonprofit are coming together, people finding more ways to do things, and really exciting. And so I think these people really get it. So that's why I say open the door, give them the opportunity.
And that's the collaborative nature that we've been talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it is one that starts with a sense of service, though. I have to keep emphasizing that. If you think you're serving yourself, why would you want to work with me if I'm out for myself and just trying to serve myself? No matter how much money I pay you, are you going to become my servant? I mean, that's, you know, to be crude about it, that's what we're really talking about.
On a personal level, Bill, who taught you this role? Who taught you this value of serving others? Your mom and dad? Did you have a mentor? I'm just curious.
Well, I would certainly say my mother. My mother, when she passed away, when I was only 24, I realized I always knew she was the value-centered person. I just didn't realize what a great leader she was. But I'm also a person of faith. And so I think those faith-based values, I never try to impose those on other people, Cathy, but those faith-based values come from my beliefs and what I believe. That's the whole concept of True North. It's what do you really believe? I would never tell you what to believe. I wouldn't tell you what to worship, you know, or even what values to have. But I think the key thing is we all know, we spend a lot of time trying to discern that and figure it out for ourselves, and then we go forward. And that may take a lifetime. Maybe you get it at a very young age. But I think and you get tested. All the time you're tested. You get tempted, get tested, things don't go your way. You stub your toe like I have many times in my life and career. And you have to pick yourself up and have the resilience. One of the key things for leadership is resilience, of having resilience to get back up and keep moving, because we'll all encounter difficulties.
And the key is, as you say, getting up and move forward.
Yeah, can you have the resilience and can you adapt to changing conditions? But can you stay true to your core? You don't change, you don't adapt by adapting your values. Because that you can't, as I tell students, never sell your soul to the man. And what I mean by that is, never give yourself over to another person. You are who you are. And if someone asks you to do something that's inappropriate, just say no. And then have a fund that you keep, and so you can walk out the door. Because you don't want to ever be in a position where somebody else owns you. Because then, then you're losing your sense of self. And you start on a slippery slope. People don't go into business to do evil things. I don't believe. I really don't. There are some, but very, very few. Not the people I'm used to working. But they get on a slippery slope. Well, no one's going to notice. And I always say, would you be happy about having this conversation, which is maybe on the radio, you don't know, published heard on the radio, or recorded on the radio, or published on the Minneapolis Star Tribune? And if we're not proud of that, then maybe we should change what we're going to say.
So when we're on the subject of values here, Bill George, this is an audience question. Have you seen your commitment to your values change others at your level of leadership, CEO level? If so, how has this happened for you?
Well, I think it would be fairly arrogant to say my commitment to values has changed others. I do see a steady change going on right now, and it's a combination of external factors and internal realization. And I see more and more CEOs. My generation of CEOs, the current generation, is terrific. I'm talking about corporate CEOs. I haven't quite made up my mind about the new generation of Wall Street CEOs. I think the jury's out. But among the corporate CEOs, I think I can say right now that the vast majority of them are really terrific. And that's a big change for my generation. I think there's a huge change. We're getting rid of the country club and all that stuff, and we're getting down to reality and humanity and spending time not with the stock markets, but with your employees and your customers. And I think they get that, and creating a value-centered culture. And I see that with some pretty hard-nosed CEOs, people you would have thought, this is a pretty tough guy. Hey, they get it.
As we're talking about Wall Street, where were the leaders who should have stood up to refute the greed is good mantra on Wall Street? Where were they?
It was one of these things, I felt that. That's one of the reasons I went to Harvard Business School, to try to refute that. But I was shocked when I got there at how much overwhelming power was coming out of the financial markets, the economists, even the legal communities, saying your only legal obligation is to serve the shareholders. That's just not true, but that was what they put forward. And so I think it was very hard. I felt like you're a voice, the few of us that were saying, felt like we were a voice in the wilderness. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so you get caught up in these things.
Hard to butt those messages because they're also pretty powerful media messages, too.
Yeah, you've been asking me nice questions. I could ask you one nice question if I could.
Yes.
Because, what is the media's role in this, if I can turn it back to you a little bit? Because the media's become leading the short-term charge, right? You don't even have to go turn on your TV or turn on your computer. You just get in your iPhone now. You get messages from the media telling you what just happened, But everything is so short-term, and the media cycle, and I'm in New York, man, it's just amazing.
24/7.
Some of these shows, it's not just 24/7, Cathy, it's 24/7, but everything changes instantly.
In a millisecond.
I was on a show once, I'll talk about kind of like you're doing tonight, and they said, well, what do you think about the Chinese bond issue that didn't go an hour ago? I was like, what Chinese bond issue? But there is this sense that everything is short term. We're winning in Libya, we're losing in Libya. Every day it changes and creates great media, but that's not the real issue. The quarterly earnings. You try to talk on a lot of media outlets. Well, let me tell you about what we've created over 10 years. Let me tell you where we're going over the next 10 years. They're not interested in that. You had a product that didn't get to market. It looks like maybe your quarterly earnings will be short by 2 cents next quarter. What do you say to that? And so I think there is, and I understand the economics of the media just a little, but I think, I understand, and I'm a big user of social media, and that's very short term, Facebook and Twitter, and a lot of message. But there, I'm trying to convey a longer term message. But I do think this is an important issue. I don't know how to solve that because the media organizations, other than your own, are frankly owned by today, very aggressive for-profit businesses that see that's how you make out. I could name names, but I won't. We're in good company.
Speaking of social media, in the past 25 years, we didn't have that, obviously. Right. It's a huge challenge. The rise of social media, I think, is a huge challenge. It's been a boon to some businesses and organizations and some leaders, and a minefield, as you know, for others. Don't leaders have to compete for mind space, Bill, in the social media sphere? And if not, is there a danger that they are looked upon as invisible and irrelevant?
Yes. Today, it's extraordinarily hard to get your messages out because people under 40, are not reading mainstream media. You aren't reading the same things you did. You're not sitting and watching the nightly news. And so I use social media very actively, and I can put out a message, walk out of here and talk about this conversation, and it'll go to 9,000 people. But I don't talk so much about what I did I never talk about what I did this weekend or, what I'm having for dinner. I mean, but I do try to convey messages on leadership. Important thoughts are coming out. Like I'm certainly going to, as soon as I get home, I'm going to take this study and say, you read this study. Make sure you know this is going on. This is important stuff. So try to convey that longer term. Or here's a leader you probably never heard of. Tony Heisch at Zappos. You need to read about this leader who's doing amazing things. You probably never heard of them. To see what they're doing. And so I think social media is looked as just another outlet. It's just another media outlet, and it's a way of getting the word out. And it's, compared to the kind of people you have listening to your show, it's a pittance. But sometimes things go viral because negatively, but sometimes they go positively viral too. And someone say, hey, this is something we ought to all look at. Here's a great little thing on YouTube. Go look at this amazing clip on YouTube.
Speaking of technology, with technology today, how has that played a role in relationships? For example, doing business face-to-face versus doing business via the internet.
Well, earlier I mentioned the six to 8 person group. I really think this is a counterpoint or an antidote to the relationships you have on Facebook or Twitter. Now, I'm just advocating for that, but that's not where you have intimate relationships. I'm certainly not going to go there and talk about, I'm thinking about leaving my job where I've got this real problem, on the home front. I'm certainly not going to do that.
But a lot of young people do that.
Well, I think you do it at your peril.
Exactly.
Because, by the way, that's like posting a picture from a fraternity party when you're or a high school party.
Exactly.
Might live with you 40 years from now when you want to run for office. But I do think, okay?
You're right.
So,
Careful with it.
But I think this is an opportunity for us to really get real in a small group. And I think you need that. You can't just have thousands of people listening to you. You have to have people where you can really talk intimately and openly and get the feedback. The best thing that ever happened in corporations is 360 feedback, where you get honest feedback from your peers and your subordinates. At Medtronic, I made a lot of mistakes in promoting people that looked good to me, were really sharp, made great presentations. And then I found out, that they had a terrible relationship with their subordinates. And so I made a policy that I would never promote anyone. Either I had data from the Human Resource Department or information, inputs about how these people were seen by their subordinates. And I think that's become the norm now, the 360 feedback idea. And people use that now as a promotion vehicle. I mean, why would you promote somebody who doesn't get along with the people they have now? And so I think, and this is becoming a criteria in evaluations and merit increases and bonuses and in promotion. And I think it's very healthy because that gets back to this whole spirit of empowerment. If your subordinates don't feel empowered by you, then you're not empowering.
See, when it comes to decision making, Bill, how much do you use data and how much do you use trusting your gut?
Well, the economists I have us use data only. I would say that depends on what level you're at, but running an organization or anywhere near the top, the database decisions got made a long time before they got to you. It was pretty obvious you're just rubber stamping. Okay, that looks like a good ROI, we'll take that one at 28%. The really tough ones all require intuition. And I would go out on a limb and say all great decisions are intuitive. Now, you have data and you have experience on which to base it. The guy that got rid of Steve Jobs at Apple 15 years ago once said, I came from PepsiCo and I had my intuition there, but when I got to Apple, I had no intuition, so I couldn't make intuitive decisions. He thought himself a good intuitive decision maker. So I believe that and I see this in medicine too, great decisions, doctors are very data-based until they get into the surgical room and somebody's about ready to die and they make an intuitive decision. But they make it based on having seen 1,000 patients like this one. So there's a huge base. So that's why it's important to get experience at a young age, not just be an advisor, but to get in there and do it. And you see great athletes, by the way, you know, they make intuitive decisions. You watch great athletes and, you know, watch, you know, okay.
Absolutely. So you mentioned, you and I have talked in the past about you working with doctors at Medtronic. What is the single greatest thing that you've learned since your time at Medtronic? The most pointed lesson you can articulate to students here at St. Catherine?
I believe more fervently than ever before that each one of us is a leader. And many people don't think they are, but each one of us is a leader because we have certain gifts from our Creator, and leading is about using those gifts, even if you never have a direct report in your entire life. And leading is about being real, being authentic, being genuine. And it's almost that simple. You know, you can learn the skills of management, how to do a budget, how to do a performance review, how to make a presentation. Those are just skills. You can learn how to do PowerPoint, which I never used to know how to do. You know, you can learn all those skills, but if it doesn't come from within here, if you're not real, so that's the single most important thing I've learned, and that is the determinant of sustainable success. You can have short-term success without that, but to have sustainable long-term success, that needs to come from within you. And if it's not there, then, and I think, you know, when we're looking and trying to recruit people for jobs and things like that, that's what we should be looking for.
Can you speak to the lack of courage leaders and at all levels of the organization to address poor performance? They lack, quote, everyday courage to face and effectively address conflict.
Well, yes, we should. It sounds, you're all going to put me down as cruel, but I actually think if people are not performing well, then they need to be moved out of their jobs. Maybe not out of the company, maybe into a job they can perform well, or maybe they should, maybe your company's grown up. I used to tell people at Medtronic, this used to be a mid-sized company, now it's a large company. You may be happier in a smaller company. You may be better in a startup company. So, and they would get really angry, and they come back a couple years later and thank you, because you recognize that they were in the wrong jobs. And there's nothing worse than coming in every day and feeling like a bad performer or you're liable to lose your job today. And so you always worry, in a leadership role, you worry about, what are all the people going to say? Are they going to think I'm being really cruel? You know, they come back to you and say, what took you so long? Why didn't you see it earlier? You know, we saw it all along. This person's a slacker, and we had to fill in for her, or we had to fill in for him.
As we're talking about employment here, Bill, do you worry, and I've seen you quoted on this too, with the recession, there's been about, 550,000 middle managers who've lost their job.
Yep.
And they're trying to get back into the workforce, but they're finding they're getting back in at a much lower wage. They're underemployed.
Right.
What are the long-term ramifications of that?
Life is long, and we have to continue developing ourselves. And I think if we develop ourselves to a skill at 25, it will not be relevant at 55. And so retraining, rethinking, going back to school, I think at universities like this one, which already is, but I'll just say to you honestly, you need to focus a lot on mid-career redevelopment of people. Now we've got a program at Harvard that a group of us put together under Rosabeth Moss-Cantor called the Advanced Leadership Initiative for people that are 60 plus or minus 5 years to think about the next 30 years. And I think we need to get people to do that. When I was at Georgia Tech today, they said, you know, everything you learn will be obsolete in 5 or 10 years, all the technology you'll learn. So it's the capacity, but also you have to adapt yourself to new roles and new places. I think, and this is radical, but I think the classic middle management jobs are going away. And, you know, my son runs a very large organization. He's got 19 direct reports. And I think that's going to be much more the norm than the exception. And he keeps in touch with them through email and Blackberries and things like that. And he can be anywhere in the world and still stay in touch. But I think those middle management jobs, which are really about controlling, an awful lot of those jobs are about controlling. What I would like to have is like a lead engineer, lead project manager, a real leader of a sales group, but a person who actually does it, is actually out there with the customers and runs a team of people. I even want to see medicine change, so we have lead physicians that have a whole team of integrative healthcare workers. I mean, I just think the idea that you sit back and you manage other people and you control budgets is not going to be the wave of the future. I think the wave of the future is going to be people that lead in real time in front of the customer, doing the work in the labs, on the production lines, actually doing the work, and leading a group of people at the same time.
By the way, how do you keep yourself fresh? How do you keep yourself on top of things?
Well, when we interview these 125 leaders for True North, Cathy, the number one thing we found was the big determinant between people who failed and people who succeeded was the capacity to stay grounded. How do you stay grounded? How do you know who you are every day? And that's where you get back to the habits. In a Christian context, you'd be praying. I talked to His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Zurich last year about this and asked him this question. He said the same thing. You need to have habits. You need to have routines. That's why people go to a place of worship once a week, or this is why they talk to their spouse every day. And if you get so ungrounded that you're just spinning around, then you will lose it. And if you start to think that the seventh home you own is going to be the best ever, forget it. You know what I mean? It's not about that. But you can lose your bearings. And you can think, I'm with ever more impressive people and I'm more, And I think you need to come back to those roots. Howard Schultz, who's now worth, $1.5 billion from Starbucks, started Starbucks, goes back to the Bayview Housing Project. This is not a middle class, this is not a working class place. This is a lower class place with drugs, crime. He takes his daughter there and they work there. Look at people, Penny and I went out and worked in a Habitat for Humanity project. And I know a lot of people that spend 100 times more than I do doing that, or going into microfinance and working for Opportunity International. I mean, these kinds of things, you got to stay in touch. I stayed in touch at Medtronic by going into operating rooms and putting on the greens, and going in with the doctor and watching the procedure. You've got to be there. You can't just call in the president of the hospital. No, the people doing the work are the ones that really make it go, and that's where you learn.
Audience question, knowing the role that Goldman Sachs had in the 2008 financial meltdown, what role does your values orientation play, especially with your work on that particular board?
Mm-hmm. I'm very proud of being on the Goldman board. I think what we say knowing the role, I'm not sure what role we do think Goldman Sachs had in the financial meltdown. I am well aware of what the media said. I've read every single article. I've been at this, not the center of it, but very much on. In fact, I led a new business standards process of the board that was overseeing a management effort to kind of look at the future of financial institutions. And I think Goldman Sachs held its integrity very well during that period. It's a tough period and came out of it. And I think you'll see it come out of it very well. Now, all financial practices need to be reassessed, in all firms, including Goldman Sachs. And are we really putting the client's interest first, or if we get caught up with our own interest? As I've said to many people, perception becomes reality. So if I think I'm trustworthy and you think I'm not, okay, then your perception becomes a reality of how I'm seen, and particularly if you're the client, the customer. And so we have a long way in Goldman Sachs, in the financial markets, by the way, in business in general, to restore trust. The trust in the values, if you ask the question, do you trust the values of American business leaders? The answer comes in somewhere between 20 and 30% of the people trust. That's a disaster. That's not just a problem, that's a disaster. Why would you follow somebody you can't trust? Would you? I mean, I wouldn't. I trust people, but if I can't trust them, I'm out of here. Just leave. Life's too short. But I think this is really key. And we in business have destroyed the trust that we were handed. Like we're given the goose to lay the golden egg, and we almost killed the goose. Mm-hmm. We need to get back, but that's not done overnight. You can restore your earnings, you can restore those kind of things. You can't restore trust overnight. It takes a steady process, because you can do great things for 30 years, and you can blow it in 30 minutes. And then it takes a long time to earn that trust back.
What's also not done overnight is getting experience. And so this is another audience question. How do you get the experience to move on to a board? Opening the aperture, this person says, is great, but not if we're not ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Start on a small board. Start on a nonprofit board. Get some board experience. I'll tell you things, I used to try to get Medtronic executives on boards because their view of the board of directors at Medtronic changed dramatically when they got on a board of a small startup company, because they had a different, you got to learn what side of the table you're sitting on, because you have a different perspective. And it's a different role. I mean, you don't want board members that are either complacent or overreaching.
This is one of my final questions. We've been talking about organizational leadership in the CEO, corner office level. How about political leadership? What do you think of our political leaders? Do you think specifically President Obama is a good leader? This person wants to ask.
Yes, I think President Obama is a good leader. I think that, you know, he understands things about politics I don't understand, and part of it's that you have to have the voters with you, and I don't have to go to I don't have to have the polls come in on me every day and say whether I'm a good leader or not. And so I think in politics, I've often been asked, do the ideas I'm talking about on leadership apply to politics? My honest answer is I don't know. Okay?
You don't know?
I don't know. I'd like to think they do, okay? I'd like to think a really value-centered leader who is true to what she or he believed in could be that way all the time and get reelected. But I see, you know, I see so many political leaders playing the game that I'm not sure. I just don't have any data. I have data on not-profit leaders. I have data on business leaders that we've helped collect. But I just don't know. I've just seen too many the other way. They've been highly successful.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
So final question for you. How about that new book? I know you're busy, and can you tell us about it?
Manuscript went in the 31st. What was that, 4 days ago? And a colleague, local colleague, Doug Baker, and I are writing it, and we're very excited about this. It's probably a little bit ahead of its time, but I think a lot of people are really interested in, you know, how would you form a small group? How would you have that sense of intimacy and depth that I can't find in my life other than maybe with my spouse or with my immediate family members? Where can I find that? And how would it really work? And what we found, and we're pulling right out of my book, True North, but the essence of it is, in being who you are, is knowing your life story and knowing your crucibles. Okay? If you don't know your crucibles, if you haven't dealt with it, you know it, you just haven't dealt with it. If you haven't dealt with who you are and you haven't dealt with your self-awareness and you haven't gone through values tests, and that's what a small group can do for you. That's not something you're going to do at work. That's not something you're going to do on social media. You might do it at your church, but the small groups we're talking about don't have any particular affinity. They could have, but they don't necessarily have any particular affinity. And they don't talk just like, it's not like just prayer groups, Bible study groups are great. AA groups are fabulous. You know, CEO of the True North Forum, the forum of YPO, Young Presidents, is fabulous. There are just a lot of these groups out there. But I think we're really looking for people to go deeply into the personal issues you have and have a support group there and talk about what you really believe. You mentioned courage. What do you think about courage? When's a time when you showed courage? When's a time when you didn't show courage? And being able to talk honestly with people about that and get real. And I think a group like this kind of helps you stay grounded and stay honest. So that's why I'm excited about it, and I hope everyone wants to read it.
Finally, are you feeling confident about our future generation of leaders?
I'm feeling totally confident about our future generation. Let's open the door and let's let them have a shot at doing it and give them a shot. It doesn't have to be a big shot. You know, I mean, it can be a little shot. Just, give them a small opportunity of 3 people to show what they can do. You know, open the door and give them a chance. And I think, in business, unlike medicine, where it takes a long apprenticeship, it's not a long apprenticeship, it's a long experience base. And honestly speaking, the leadership opportunities you get in college, in university, like this one, in graduate school, and in early work experiences stay with you the rest of your life. I still remember the experiences I had in college in leadership, when I stubbed my toe and when I was successful and I was unsuccessful. I still remember every mistake I ever made at Linton Microwave. And then I tried not to replicate and not to duplicate those, but sometimes you do. So I think those early experiences are much more powerful in impacting you. Don't wait. Don't be an advisor until you're 40. Get out and do it. And no athlete would ever stand on. I've never met an athlete yet, or a cellist yet, that would rather listen to a great concert than play the cello in a great concert. Or I found an athlete who would rather watch a video of athletes performing or watch a TV game than they would actually be out doing it. And I think same thing's true of leadership. Go do it. And let's help everyone have a chance. And so that means, half the people are women, and we have half the people are women leaders.
Bill George, I always enjoy talking to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cathy.
Good job.
Thank you. Great job.
No, thank you. It was great.
Now, what you just heard, they cut me off, but what you just heard
Sorry about
is
that.
an interview, is somebody who can ask questions at an increasingly deep level. And, you know, I would asked her a not so general question about the media. This is what we need on the media. We don't need people yelling and shouting and screaming at each other. We need people that are willing to ask really good, probing questions, not powder, you know, not just cream puffs, but really deep. Isn't she great? Give her a round of applause. You want us to leave?
Thank you.
Ethical, effective, and enduring were the core principles upon which the MAOL was founded 25 years ago. I stand here today my name is Paula King, and I'm the Dean of the School of Business and Leadership. And what I'd like to say is that you both illuminated those principles at a wonderful level for us this evening. And I personally feel very privileged to be in the audience to hear you talk about that, and would like to say that the strong point for me came from everything coming from a sense of service. That's wonderful. So thank you very, very much.